Thanks for joining us on Media News. We are live from our Abuja studio, bringing you the latest stories shaping Nigeria and the world at this hour.
The process of impeachment is on as we speak.
We begin the news in Rivers State, where the State House of Assembly has dismissed claims that the ongoing impeachment process against Governor Siminalayi Fubara is being influenced by the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike. A spokesman of the Assembly, Enemy George, insists that lawmakers were acting strictly within constitutional provisions and not the behest of any political figure. Meanwhile, Governor Siminalayi Fubara is yet to react to the latest impeachment moves, more than 24 hours after the lawmakers began the action. The Rivers State political crisis is deepening following the lawmakers' notice of gross misconduct against Governor Siminalayi Fubara and his deputy Ngozi Odo. Analysts say the confrontation could reshape Rivers politics and test Nigeria's constitutional processes and the South-South. In this report, we take a look at the political developments in the state.
The political temperature in Rivers State has once again reached a boiling point. Months after President Bola Tinubu lifted the state of emergency to calm tension, political observers warn that the crisis may now be spiraling beyond control. But how did Rivers get here? The cracks became visible in late 2023, shortly after Governor Siminalayi Fubara assumed office. Trouble began when the governor attempted to influence the leadership of the State House of Assembly by pushing for a preferred speaker. The move failed, deepening mistrust between the executive and the legislature. The House subsequently suspended lawmakers believed to be loyal to the governor, effectively polarizing the Assembly. The situation worsened when Governor Fubara declined to release funds to the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission, insisting on caretaker committees to run local governments instead of elected councils. Those councils, incidentally, were chaired by political allies of the Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, who had relied heavily on them as campaign coordinators to help Fubara to win the governorship election. Matters escalated when the assembly complex was demolished, allegedly on claims of structural defect, with attempts also made to pull down the lawmakers' residential quarters until Rivers elders intervened.
At the tone we have come to regarding the political crisis in Rivers State.
Presidential intervention followed with a peace agreement brokered by President Bola Tinubu in late 2024.
Tell you people whose mind is dark, who all they want is anarchy, crisis, and for Rivers innocent people to suffer.
Amid rising tension, a bomb explosion rocked parts of the state, heightening security concerns. In February 2025, the Supreme Court delivered a critical judgment affirming the legitimacy of 27 lawmakers loyal to Wike, giving them an upper hand against the governor. With unrest looming, President Tinubu declared a state of emergency in Rivers State in March 2025, appointing retired Vice Admiral Ibawete Ibas as sole administrator for 6 months, citing the state's strategic importance to national stability. Political observers believe Rivers has returned to ground zero, if not worse, than before the emergency rule. They also say President Tinubu is treading carefully, aware of Rivers' strategic importance to his 2027 re-election bid. They note that the president needs both men, Wike with his formidable political machinery and ministerial clout, and Fubara, his party's elected governor with public goodwill. To openly side with either could tilt the balance dangerously. For now, all eyes are on President Tinubu as Nigerians watch how his political sagacity will shape the next chapter of the seemingly unending Rivers crisis.
Join us live via Zoom is TVC News Uche Okoro in Port Harcourt, Rivers State. Thanks for joining us, Uche. Bring us up to speed how a resident of Rivers State grappling with the recent impeachment move against the governor.
As I mentioned yesterday, opinions are divided. There is no one-size-fits-all reaction to what's going on in Rivers State. There are those who are of the view that the governor has no reason to be fighting a man who was heavily instrumental to his emergence as governorship candidate against all odds, defeating a lot of other contenders who many had believed to be more fit for the office. Many are of the view that yes, the governor has no reason to have started this political fight in the first place, even if he had, maybe not this soon. At the same time, there are those who see that the governor is fighting a just cause for the liberation of Rivers State. So what is going on now has further polarized the state, has further divided opinions, those who are for and those who are against. But as I say, from my experience in the state, public opinion has little or no effect on the outcome of political calculations like this. At the end of the day, the solution that will come will have to come from the politicians themselves.
Uche, 24 hours after this impeachment process started, we have yet to get any reaction from the governor or his political associates.
Absolutely. 24 hours after, it's more than 24 hours. This happened between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. yesterday. The state had been set on fire, figuratively speaking, by virtue of what transpired on the floor of the makeshift chamber of the Rivers State House of Assembly. Remember, they are still meeting at the residential quarters and not the original House of Assembly complex that is still being reconstructed. Surprisingly, I kept following up. I was at the assembly yesterday. I kept following up from that location, following up to what's going on, trying to see get the pillars from the brick house. But there seems to be silence from that end. We do not know why the government hasn't officially reacted to this. Perhaps something is going on. Of course, I expect that things will be going on, meetings and discussions will be going on behind the scenes, behind closed doors. Maybe the governor and the government or his administration have chosen to toe that line. Perhaps they believe that talking at this point, or speaking, or words, actions rather speak louder than words in this case. So we expect to see, if he is not talking, we believe that he's acting. And in the next few days, we believe that whatever the results of the action we expect that will be happening behind the scenes, the results will begin to manifest. At the end of the day, the buck stops at the table of Mr. President, in this case, who is one, the national leader of the APC, where the governor now belongs, and of course, the boss of the minister of the FCT, who is a member of the presidential cabinet.
Oche, you have covered Rivers politics for a while now, and I want to ask this question. What are the possible political and constitutional implications if the impeachment process goes ahead, especially given Rivers' history of crisis?
If it goes ahead, we know what, if the governor is, the assembly members have said that these allegations of gross misconduct have shown that the governor and his deputy do not have the capacity to perform their functions in their various offices. Now, if the governor is affected, big if, it's a very, very mighty big if, he's affected by this, of course, the same thing, the same hammer dropped on the deputy governor. Constitutionally speaking, I do not need to tell you who constitutionally speaking, the mantle will fall on, pending whatever is resolved by election or whatever. But you already know when the governor is not there, the deputy governor is not there. Ordinarily, we know who it falls on. We also know who the number 4 man is, of course, in the state hierarchy. Now, if that happens, that is what will happen. There is no vacuum in governance. Constitutionally, there is no vacuum in governance. Somebody would have to step up, to pilot the affairs of the state pending whatever resolutions are reached. But there is also the other aspect which you talked about, which is the tendency for political violence. You recall that when the tenure of some local government chairmen were said to have expired, and then they decided to hang on to power, and then there was an election, and they were supposed to leave, and all of that. The governor decided to appoint caretaker chairmen, and then it resulted in violence at almost all the local governments in the state. I had to And then we just had a new commissioner of police who went on tour, and we saw massive, extensive damage to different local government areas. So the tendency for political violence is very, very high. So for those who would not want this impeachment process to go through, apart from the politics of it, I'm sure that the reasons why persons will kick against it is because of the possibility of this plunging the state into another round of physical violence, bloodshed, and damage to property.
Thank you very much, our correspondent there in River State, Uche Okoro, giving us updates on the impeachment process of the Governor Siminalayi Fubara and his deputy.